Hey there, everybody. I just wanted to give you a heads up as you embark on this episode with us. Caleb's microphone was having a hard time in the first few minutes, and it does get better as you go along. So please stick around, tune in for the great time that we had, and listen in as he harvests his 191-inch buck. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good time and enjoy. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the East to West Hunts podcast, where we talk all things hunting from tag applications, hunt planning, some amazing stories, tips and tricks, and more. Today, I have a fantastic guest on, Mr. Caleb Drake from the Backwoods Bulletin podcast. I'm very, very excited for today. I want to applaud you. I saw you knock down an absolute monster of a buck. And I was fortunate enough to see that baby up close and personal, but I did not get to hear the story. And I'm excited about this because I think there's a lot that we'll probably uncover as we talk about it. But
I don't, it's kind of funny because when I kind of do this thing when I'm hunting and when it comes to the decision process of like shooting a deer. I think it's like the last 3 or 4 bucks I've shot. I'm not even sure how big they are. I kind of make like a, quick assessment depending on how close they are, like how big a deer is. And then I turn my brain off to the rack pretty well. Like an example would be like a deer I harvested last year here in Iowa. I just saw that there was some mass on his, like, the width of his antler was like 2 inches. And I was like, wow, that's a really heavy buck. I'm going to shoot him. And then, if you take, like, I harvest this buck and go up to him like, whoa, this is a lot different than what I thought. He was like, he's a really weird looking deer, like really tight 10-pointer and like really thin. As far as like, I don't know, he's an odd mass. So like for me, there's a lot, the part of the story we'll get into that this deer was around me for nearly 40 minutes before I shot. And so,
wow. Okay.
I had time to continue to not focus on his rack. But even through that time, I had absorbed enough in my brain somehow subconsciously that I knew, that this was just the biggest buck I'd ever had a chance at and seen. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, there was a lot there. I've seen guys that cry, when they go up, to get up to it.
Yeah, and get emotional.
Yeah. And I just about did, it was pretty overwhelming, I would say. It was pretty surreal and overwhelming. And he was honestly larger than I had thought. He's not, and you've seen him, he's not framey. He's just he's got mass that carries like nothing I've ever seen. So
yeah. He looks kind of like trashy too in a way. Even from pictures, but I mean, obviously in person a little bit different. So yeah. Well, I don't know about you. I'm a character kind of guy. Like I like to shoot the cool kind of deer. Hence, I know you've seen the one that's on my wall over here, but he's not the biggest. But I shot him just because he had some cool junk coming, and he was really tall, and I mean he's an old deer, but yeah.
Well, character, it's more unique, I think, because extra points in that, right? Like it's not, a big framed put a number of points in their deer. No deer is the same, but there's other ones of those around. But you get that buck that's got something goofy going on. You're like, we're not going to see this again.
Correct. Yeah, man. Well, so did you so have you seen this buck before, like on the camera or anything, or have you come up close before or no?
Okay. So no, actually with this piece that we hunted, it's like 60 acres and we have permission on it. We don't own this land. When I say we, I mean my dad and I.
And you're in Iowa, just for reference.
I harvested this buck in Illinois.
Oh yes, okay. So you're in Iowa, but you harvested in Illinois.
Yeah.
Okay, so got that scoop down. Cool.
Yeah. So, but I will say this: there is a buck fall of 2022 that I had an encounter with, and on his left side he was a main, like had a main, what people would refer to as a mainframe 10-pointer. So he had 5 points on his left, and on his right side he had this really weird like triple, like a turkey foot type of triple beam looking thing. It was kind of a
Okay.
goofy looking buck. We
Okay.
called him Groot that year, we referred to him as Groot.
Okay.
Um, and so there's a part of me that wants to believe that that's the deer, just two
Okay.
years older, that he was like a 4.5 and now he's 6 or something.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, this deer, like, with the way his rack sat on his head, I feel as it was different. So, in all honesty, like, I don't think I had ever seen him
Okay.
or it before. So,
But do you scout that property? I mean, is that something where you like go over to Illinois and check it out?
so the scouting, the stand that I was in was what I would call like an established stand. So,
Okay.
it's a stand that we have hunted out of for many years. And it
Okay.
really just because of the way that the terrain is there. It's a funnel. It's a natural funnel. And so there's really, I mean, you can move the stand 5 yards here, 5 yards there, but you're still kind of shooting the same trails or shooting the same
Mm-hmm.
range points. Um, so like scouting wise, we hadn't scouted this year that property yet. Honestly, it was completely untouched, and the reason being is because of a different 40-acre piece of property my parents bought and they plan to retire on. So yeah, we've been focusing on this other 40 acres all summer. And they'd put a bunch of it into CRP 2 years ago. And so that was coming up really nice and just getting it ready for them to just enjoy. Like my dad to just go out and, that we put up I never thought I'd put up like a tower blind, but they put like they got a good deal on one kind of thing. And um, so they put one of those up and stuff like that. Like we've just been out kind of manicuring it in a way to just make it the best that it can be for what it
Mm-hmm.
is. As we got cameras out there, and it's kind of just a fun place to connect as a family in that. And so we had just kind of looked at this place right and harvesting this giant. It was kind of like a second thought. Like, we know there's good deer activity there. We know that not a lot of big deer necessarily live on that property, but they move through it in the rut, especially. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, we didn't even focus on it at all. I mean, like we thought there's one creek crossing that I like to put a camera on because usually you can get some good buck pictures just for fun to see what you
Yeah.
missed basically when you don't sit out there. Or when I'm I'm in Iowa and it's like, oh great, 13
Right.
times I could have shot a big buck or something. It's like, and I was sitting
Make you
over
feel
here in
bad?
Iowa. I picked the wrong day again. So, but yeah, nothing was out there. And so we had really, the reason we went there this evening was because we had done some work on the other 40 acres, just kind of getting some stuff ready. And then it was
Mm.
like, well, we've got 2 hours to hunt. Like we should just go over there and, each pick a separate stand and just kind of go for it.
It's worked out. How funny, man.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow that's just how it works out.
Yeah.
So you have nothing to lead you on that this giant is living there, aside for that you've obviously hunted it, and I'm assuming you've seen other good deer on the property,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Very much
How
so.
long? How long have you guys been hunting it?
Oh man. Not as long as we should have been. I remember we've had permission on this place for I don't know. So I've been bow hunting since I don't even know, probably, I don't even know how long. It's been 15 or 17 years that I've been bow hunting. And
Okay,
the whole time I've been
long
bow
time.
hunting, we've had permission on it, but maybe 2/3 of that time is when we've actually utilized it.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I think as I've grown as an outdoorsman in that way, it's like we realize oh, yeah, this is a really good place to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So we focused on it more at different times of the year, because of that. So
Got it.
yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, anything kind of stood out there as far as like conditions? I mean, obviously you were hunting the rut, I'm assuming,
Well,
based on
this
the
is
dates.
October. Um,
Okay.
okay, that property, yes, we typically would target it in like November, and some point in November, and that's when we've actually harvested a lot of, yeah, probably well, at least my three biggest deer I've killed actually have come from that same property. So,
Okay. Wow.
and the other two were in November, like the first two
How
weeks of
crazy.
November.
Okay.
Um, so again, yeah, there's some historical knowledge there, right? And it's not like,
Mm-hmm.
um, not necessarily this specific stand. This specific stand is shot. We've shot two really nice deer than this one, so 3 really big deer out of it.
Okay.
And I think that's, I don't know, conditions as much, like conditions on the day. It was kind of a little warmer. So if you remember in October, I don't know if you were in the Midwest in like Illinois or Iowa, we had a cold front come through in like early middle October, or a couple of them. And then we
Okay.
had a Wednesday and a Thursday. And on the Wednesday, super strong south, or strong south, like decent south winds on Wednesday. And then Thursday, it was super strong south winds. And
Okay.
I don't know where, I don't know if it was like somebody in some bigger name hunting person. I've listened to enough of those guys that are out there that they talk about the first strong wind opposite of what the other ones have been for like a certain number of days. So like kind of like
Okay.
it's like a reverse of a cold front, right? Where you have like stagnant weather and then you get a snap of a cold front. Like that,
Yeah.
you have like some colder weather that had been around for a few days, and then you get a snap of like a warm front, and there's something significant like a heavy wind.
Hmm.
That's something to hunt on. And so we had that. I think we had gusts up to 30 miles per hour that day. On that, so like it was really, really windy. And so at that time of year, I'm trying to think, I mean, and for me, what was playing out in my head as we were going out. So if you hunt with your, like a buddy or your dad or anything, for us, we always are discussing like who should sit where. Like,
Okay. Yeah.
okay, like what about this stand? What about that stand? What about this spot? Those sorts of things. So it's almost like the analysis paralysis, or whatever you call it. You saw
Yep.
your way out. And we were doing that on the way out. And I remember telling my dad, I said, whoever sits at that stand, we call it the creek stand. Whoever sits at the creek stand, I'm like, I know they're going to at least see deer.
Hmm.
And he's like, why do you think that? And I'm like, well, it's between hardwoods, bedding cover, there's water, and then there's a food source within 150 yards of there. So like you got all
Hmm.
the recipes for things that deer are going to be heading towards in like the third week of October. So
Okay.
I was coming back here to Iowa the next morning. So it was like, well, you better sit there, because it's like I haven't been back since, actually, to Illinois. I'll be going back this week,
Mm.
but to fill my doe tag, and hopefully help my dad fill his buck tag. But um, so that was ultimately like kind of the situation where I was like, okay, like, yeah, I guess I should probably try to fill one of these, these out of state tags. Don't know when I'm
Yeah.
back. And we just,
Did your dad tell you to go to that stand, or did you kind of set on that?
I mean, he let me decide,
Got it. Got it.
so we usually hunt one end. It's kind of, it's kind of weird. So like the property slopes, and there's not a lot of, the property is just by one kind of gradual slope from a creek up to a top. And the top is on the far south end and the creek is on the far north end. So it's like weird, because whenever you're going up, you feel like you're going north, but you're going south. So it's really
Okay.
weird. So we always kind of set on opposite ends so we don't like block each other. So he went way south up on kind of on the top, and I was like, and he was like, it was too windy. Like I should have, there's a couple of stands up there. One of them's in a little bowl. He's like, I should have been sitting there. Um,
Was he just rocking in the tree or what?
I think so. He didn't even see a deer. It's up on top of these ridges. The ridges are really good at different times of the year. I mean, on a northwest wind, they're dynamite, and we got some stands that are set up, to kind of catch deer cruising east to west on them.
Hmm.
But yeah, south wind straight in his face. No deer. It wasn't cold, thankfully, so it's not like he's sitting up there shivering. But you got a picture,
Yeah.
like
Totally.
he's like, it's like a dead zone, and you're like, man, what's going on? Like, why is there no deer? And then I'm down there encountering this giant for 40 minutes. Um, so it's just funny. You just never know.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
you got into, well. Let's go back real quick, because you
sure.
mentioned it's on a slope. Is there anything kind of unique with the topography that causes the deer to go in there? Because it sounds like you're saying it's like a funnel or something.
Yeah. So like I mean, the whole property, the whole 60 acres it's very gradual. Um, but where this stand is, there's a few things that I've reflected more. Um, that really make it like what it is. So there is a creek that runs, and there's an oxbow,
Okay.
So you think about it, if you draw an S on a piece of paper, so like the top of the S, the top part would be the part where I suspected your bed. And then where you get to the bottom part where it kind of S curves back, the bottom bubble, the stand is almost at the top of the bottom bubble.
Okay.
And so what pinches the deer is that when they come out of that bedding area, they come right to the top of that oxbow or the bottom part of that S past where the stand is.
Okay.
And the reason why, there's a few reasons, I think. One of them is that there's a steep incline right there. So like as they come out of the bedding, like this buck, for instance, when he came up out of bedding, the first point I saw him, he was at the top of this rise, and it goes from where the bedding area is, probably elevates at least 10 feet. But it's not like super, super steep, and it's not overly dramatic in that way. But he can get up to top there, and then he can see really far. So he can see out to the ag fields from there. You can see again, that bottom bubble part that created an oxbow or an inverse oxbow the other way towards the ag field. So he can see everything down there. He can see all these of the hardwoods in front of him. And then there's a creek crossing that is like this creek is a little deeper on the other, like on that whole upper oxbow part. And where the creek crossing is, I mean, you can cross it just unless it's heavy rains and flooding. I mean, you can, like, it sounds like a Colorado mountain stream, like when you're sitting there, because it's like there's rocks exposed, and it's just it's a gorgeous spot.
Love that.
Yeah, so really unique. And then further down, so like as this property slopes down, so now we're going past it, like further away from the oxbow here. There's actually, it almost creates like a thermal hub. Is like there's two other ridges that come down off this other, it all slopes together down to and it's past the stand. So the bucks can go down there, and there's actually it's like a telephone size pole down there, and there's always rubs on it. Like there's bucks rubbing this, like it's literally like
how funny,
like a telephone pole down there.
Okay.
So it's like, and it might even be bigger. I don't know. It's huge. So it just kind of has all these factors, right there together.
Yeah,
which
sounds like
I've
it.
kind of reflected after the fact. And so we put the stand where the deer like there's some options for them to go. Either they come up to that top, and they can either go straight south up the slope and away. They can come behind the stand, between the stand and the creek, as they go towards the crossing. Or they can go they can either curve. We've had deer also come up and curve around the front of the stand even, and still head the same direction, kind of towards the crossing or towards that little bowl thermal hub. So, but that's something I think after the fact I've really learned, like, okay, that's why we consistently have bucks moving through there.
Yeah, there's got to be something, right? Because just from what I heard, it just seemed like it's kind of the spot to be. Plus, I mean, you're talking a pretty small amount of acreage, so it's not like you're talking, 1,000 acres you're hunting.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, and it connects, it connects to big woods all around it, but it's not like, if you look on it's not like if you look on like a map, like you're e-scouting, it's not like you can like pull it up and like topography wise, there's not a lot you're going to find, it's pretty subtle. Like you might see the one little line, I guess, or a few lines close together, but honestly, your contours would have to be set like less than 5 feet, if you can even do that. A lot of like 5 to 10 feet.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
So like if it's a 10 feet incline, or maybe even if it's 15, let's say, I mean, you're only looking at 2 to 3 lines right there. So it's nothing significant in that setting. So knowing that, it's just like, well, yeah, pretty great location by happenstance.
It's awesome, man. Well, good for you there. Well, yeah. So I guess let's hear it, man. You're getting me excited here to hear about this. But
well, it
sounds like a late warm day.
Yeah. Yep. So we've done all this work, and my dad, he's retiring this year, and he's he's in his 60s, so he's getting tired.
Nice.
Like trying to decide if we're even going to hunt, really, and that's ultimately he was like, hey, I gotta go. I gotta get out there. I have to. I mean, I'm exhausted too. I drove in the night before, got in at like 11 p.m. We got it that morning, did work, and then we're going out. So,
do you guys hunt together a lot?
Typically, yeah. And even when like this morning I went out hunting, and he went hunting for like a quick hour and a half in Illinois. So like, I'm here in Iowa and he's there. We'll like text back and forth. which
Yeah,
is
that's fun.
yeah, it's super fun. And so, for him, I think I don't know, he's getting more used to hunting without me now. But especially when like in college and stuff, it was like years ago, we're talking, 10 years ago plus now. It's like he would rarely go without me. And I'm like, you gotta still live, man. Like you gotta get out there, like, you gotta go on. Um,
That's
so,
awesome.
so yeah, we do. So like this weekend, I don't know if he's gonna hunt again this week. Excuse me, but until I'm there. But
Yeah,
father son thing.
well, that's awesome, man. Good for you.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So we get out there. We picked our stands. I'm trying to think here. I think, yeah, we kind of parked middle of the property. I went north and he went south, and so I just walked in like, we're probably in the last hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes of daylight.
Okay,
So as I was
pretty
walking
late.
in, like up at the top, what?
So pretty late.
Yeah.
Good for you,
Oh
man.
yeah. We feel like,
Last minute or so.
yeah. So we're like getting in there, pretty late, and I'm taking my time, just as best I can as I'm like, because there's leaves on the ground. I was trying to just not make as much to little, like, as close to no noise as possible. Getting in, so just walking quickly, but trying to be really quiet. And so I got on the stand and I didn't spook any deer, which I felt like, okay, if I could get in here clean, then we're good. And again, I have a doe tag in Illinois, and then you have an either sex tag. When you buy your out of state license, you have those options. Like if you buy the either sex, they make you buy the doe tag. So it's like, they make a little extra money on you as a non-resident.
And you're like, of course.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I was content, honestly, to harvest a doe. So I get in the stand and I kind of, I get my, safety strap on or whatever, and I hang my bow up. And then I'm like sitting there maybe 5 minutes after I do that, just ranging trails, making sure I'm familiar with how far things are. And I look to so the stand faces kind of north, it kind of faces northeast, or sorry. It faces southwest.
Okay.
Southwest. So I'm facing southwest. That was a lot of words.
We're southwest.
There's a lot of words
we're southwest.
there,
Okay. Because I'm in a full circle now.
Yeah, you're in a full circle. So we're all in a full circle together here for everybody listening. Just spin around in your chair.
Wait a minute, I'm here. Hold on, I'm here.
Just spin around in your chair. Again, the property sets up. I've hunted it for over a decade, and I still don't know what it's all my credibility. I am an idiot, and I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, all right.
All right, so where are we at?
So
southwest?
We're facing southwest, and as I'm looking into the timber, which is in front of me, behind me is the creek and an ag field, which would be basically directly north. So that's kind of the setup. Again, I settle in, and I within 5 minutes I look over just basically straight to your left. If you're sitting here, you just turn your head to your shoulder, toward like parallel with your shoulder, and they're like, so you're looking about east southeast, is kind of the direction you're looking. And there was a doe there, and she was big enough that I was like, she's not as massive though, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna shoot that deer if it comes in. And she was at 35, so she was kind of already in range. But I was like, if she comes on this trail that goes that side of the stand, she would have come to like 15 yards. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna wait for her to walk in. I text my dad. I was like, hey, you cool if I shoot a doe tonight? Like, are we shooting does? He's like, 100% up to you. So I was like, okay. I was like, all right, I might try. So this deer, but she just veered. She kept she kept coming in, but she was veering further and further away as she was coming in. So she got 45, 50 yards. And then there's a trail further west of me. And it runs north to south. And if she hopped on that trail and came my way, she passed my stand again within 20 yards. But she took the trail and went straight into the timber. She went straight south. I'm away from all the food. And another key factor I guess I should mention when I got in there is I saw acorns on the ground, and I could actually hear them falling. So I knew we had a good acorn. They had
some good crop.
Over here in Iowa, we did not. That's something I paid attention to a lot. We had a bumper crop of acorns in Iowa last year. And with how many people were talking about it, it's something I've paid attention to a lot more this year. So I was like, okay, acorns everywhere. Got it. Like these deer don't have to move very far to get to food.
Yeah. And they got water there. So, I mean,
so she kind of veers off, and I'm like, as that's happening, I'm hearing something like due east of me. So almost have to look back over your shoulder, but I was so focused on her, it almost sounded like a squirrel. You know what I mean? Where you're like,
oh yeah,
yeah,
making
whatever.
a racket.
You know what I mean? Like you just hear that every so often, kind of just push. And it's like, yeah, great. So she finally gets to like 80 yards, and I'm like, yeah, that deer's gone. Like she's not coming in. And then I'm like, I'm just gonna glance over my shoulder and look. And I looked where the direction of the noise is coming from, and I just caught a glance of like antler, and it ended up being this buck's right side. And I could just see like, and so in that moment, I could see he had his head down eating acorns. I could just see that the right side had like 5 points. So I was like, all right, grab my bow. I'm like, he's good enough for me. So like while he was that far away, his head down, I just grabbed my bow, and then I turned back towards him. When I do that, he lifts his head up, and I'm like, yeah, that's a nice deer. Like he's at like 45-ish yards. And he just stood there, and he was chewing on some acorns. Again, at this point, like I didn't put my binos on him or anything because he was close enough that I was like, I'd already decided, yeah, I'm going to shoot this deer, or at least attempt to harvest this buck. So I just confirmed that he had, another side of his rack basically. And I looked at it just a little bit closer, and I could kind of tell like he might have like a split brow tine or something on one or both of his antlers. So I was like, oh, he's like a double split brow tined buck.
Look kind of funky.
So I was like, okay, he's like a 12-pointer, like sweet. And then as he turned his head to the back to the right one time, I could see he had another like weird inline point. So I was like, oh, he's like a 13-point buck. Like that's pretty big. It's sweet. So like at that point though, I stopped even analyzing the rack at all. And I was like, all right, I'm just
because you were like, you're gonna shoot him.
Yeah. It was like, all right, yeah, like this is big enough for me. I was just shocked, I'm like, oh, crazy, a buck, like it's my third sit of the year in Illinois. And so this is where it gets like grueling, because normally you see a deer and they're facing you and they're that direction. They like walk, somewhere. They get to where they're going, like that doe did. Like the doe, this whole time the doe was around me was less than 5 minutes.
Okay, that's pretty quick.
I see her, she walks past in front of like 50, veers off, like all that is like, and I'm even like texting my dad, like, so I'm thinking, yeah, this deer's gonna walk right in. He's either gonna go behind me or in front of me, maybe follow that doe's path, whatever. Like, so he's hidden there, and he takes like 3 steps forward, and there's a rub on a tree, and he lightly rubbed it, but then he stood there, and it was like 5 minutes, 6 minutes. He stood there, and he was
taking a sweet old time.
Everything. I mean, there was a bunch of raccoons around there's a couple blown down trees, behind the tree to the west, and so there's like raccoons in there. A couple of them are like doing their stupid fighting thing they do, and so like he would like look at that. And then the closest road is I don't know, a few hundred yards at least, maybe a half mile away. A car went down that road. He like flicked his ear over that way, looked. He was just checking everything. And so like when I mentioned earlier with that terrain feature, he just gotten to the top of it. So he's standing there, just analyzing the woods, basically.
Yeah.
What I suspect. So then he's at this point where he's either going to walk on the trail behind the stand, and that trail comes to like 5 yards, or he's going to walk on the trail in front of the stand, within 20, or he's going to go to where those two trails kind of come together, and one of them veers way off, like southeast, like just gone, So I was like, all right, I got to wait. I can't get too excited. Of course, my heart rate had already gone way up.
I was about to say, are you weak in the knees at this point?
Yeah. So like, I'm sitting still. So like, my heart rate goes way up, but he stood there for so long, my heart rate came back down. And then he took his next steps, and it was like 5, I don't even know. He maybe moved 5-6 yards closer and stopped again, and then did his whole analytics thing. And it was probably, that one was a shorter stop. And then he moved into like, he got within 25 yards, and he decided he was on the trail. coming behind the tree. So he gets to about 25 yards, and the tree that I'm in actually had broke off basically in half. It like fell down towards him. So he's behind the dead leaves of this tree, and he starts rubbing a tree.
So this tree falls while he's there, or it's
No,
already
it had fallen.
Okay.
It had fallen. I don't know who knows.
Oh, I got it.
It had
Okay.
been
Okay.
probably a couple weeks.
Got it.
And so this tree, so the fallen over tree that's like leaning against the tree that I'm in, and all the dead leaves are like now between me and him. And he started to rake a tree there because I'm still sitting down, so my body's still facing southwest, and the deer's coming in behind me. So he's gonna end up on the north side of the tree. So I'm thinking, so I have to turn around because otherwise I'm gonna have to take a terrible quartering 2 shot, and I just wouldn't be able to. So I'm like, I have to turn around at some point. So he starts raking a tree, and I'm like, this is my chance to turn around. So like I stood up and turned around really quickly so that I kind of positioned the tree. So I'm like facing the tree now, facing northeast. Buck is kind of in line with the tree, and this other part of the tree that had fallen over in the leaves. He rakes this tree, and then he stands there again, just looking around at everything. And I think at that point, I kind of absorbed a little more understanding of how big his rack was. Of course, the heart rate still goes, my heart rate was fluctuating. It was crazy. It was like, okay, he's going to come all the way in. And then he would just stop. And you're like, oh.
Just teasing you, man.
Yeah.
Just teasing you.
Yeah, and I think at one of the points, he's coming in, and I was thinking to myself, like, this is the kind of deer that like you just wait for, I was trying to stay focused because I didn't my mind was telling me that he's not going to come in. My mind was telling me like, there's no way, cause I've bow hunted a while now, over half of my life. So it's like, I have messed up so many times.
Sure.
And I'm sure anybody that's listening has done that. You've probably done that too, Alex.
Absolutely. You got to learn from it.
You just mess up. And so you don't expect them to work out all the time. And honestly, most of the time. And so like my mind was like, you're going to mess something up, or he's going to pick you out in the tree. Like it was almost this weird like cycle. Like every time like something like this would happen, and I've never had an encounter with a buck this size, but like every time it's happened in the past, it really, really rarely, or 1 out of every 5 times it works out. So it's like, man, this is not going to happen. But it's like, no, I've got to like focus and like really just be like, I have more time. I have 17 years of time behind this deer. Like basically at one point, like I can wait as long as I need to for this buck to get within range.
Yeah.
And present
a
shot. Like I remember thinking that thought at one point, like this is worth it. It's going to be worth it. So he's at like 25. He takes his next set of steps and he gets within 20 now. And
nice.
Again, with this tree being kind of down, I mean, he's quartering 2 and he's on this trail and he's really close. So he stops there. So I've got the tree between my ladder stand tree between me and him. And I would just keep my right eye outside of the tree enough that I could keep an eye on some part of his body, but I never wanted my whole head poking out behind the tree. I mean, I had a hat on and a face mask and stuff, so it's not like my face was gleaming or anything.
Yeah, but still, I get it.
So I would just always keep an eye on like one of his legs at least. And so then he stopped there for, probably another, I don't even know, 5 minutes. I think when he was at 15 was his second longest stop of the first longest being when he first took after his first 3 steps. And then he moves in, like he literally gets like behind my tree after that. He took a few more steps and he's like underneath my tree almost like 5 yards, and he stopped again. And like, I could just look behind and see his back 2 legs. And so I was just trying to look at his back 2 legs to see if there was anything I could tell by his tail flicking, or like if he was stomping, anything like that to determine if he was at all nervous. I mean, he's so close. So you know how like if you hold your bow, like I'm not holding my bow towards him either. My bow is turned back towards like my arm almost, like my arrow's kind of going back like this way. And I was gripping my bow so tight so that it would not move. And it swelled up on, not like visibly, but like it was basically internally like sore and swollen for like 3-4 days after this.
Wow.
Like, I remember like I was like, oh man, like my hand is just, and then I couldn't figure it out for a couple of days. I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably what it was from, because I was like locking fingers together so that my bow wouldn't move. So then he takes his final few steps. Like then he's finally like he gets into that window of like, I can draw. It's a quartering away shot, and when I practice shooting my bow, I always line up my peep sight with my sight housing on my bow.
Okay.
And then I have a level on there, and I typically check level briefly, and then I settle the pin where I'd like it to go. And then, the bow goes off. I try to just like slowly apply pressure to my trigger. So
Okay.
the bow kind of goes off. It's almost like a surprise to help me, because I sometimes target panic, and like I'll like shoot, and I'll just shoot too quickly. So I'm going through those things, and I mean, I've got this thing buried behind his shoulder, and the bow goes off and I miss. And that's probably the craziest part, because like,
wow, okay,
there's a couple branches that I'd missed, like looking through and he's at like 5 to 7 yards, mind you. And I'm
okay,
thinking, like, I remember like the bow going off, and in my mind, like as the bow goes off, I'm like, that's a dead deer. Like, there's just no way. And
right.
then the arrow hit it hit at least a foot, probably about a foot underneath
So
it.
it hits a branch and
Deflected down underneath the deer.
No kidding. Okay.
So like,
How'd he react to that?
Well, that's what's interesting. I think, to go back to the raccoon point, we had so many varmints around us. He jumped. He just kind of he didn't even jump in the air. He's like bounded. He's like one bound. So he's facing west. He takes one bound west. Then he turns north and actually cuts back northeast to like 5 steps is all. So he's like 12 yards, quartering away, but on his other side now. Instead of his left side, it's his right side. And so I'm like, there's no way. Like in a moment, and all in a moment, I'm thinking, no way I missed. He didn't spook. I think I can get a second shot, like all like within split seconds. And where I'm facing him now, on the tree, I have my bag hanging, and my quiver is shoved into my bag a little bit. So I shoot without my quiver typically, to just not have that obstruction in the tree. So my arrows fletchings are like pointing right at me, which is perfect. So I'm quickly like grabbing another arrow to knock an arrow, as he's like, he's frozen, he's looking left and right, but he's facing away from me. I suspect he thought it was a raccoon or an acorn dropping, because there were so many acorns dropping, and there's so many rustling of leaves, and it landed so far, it didn't even come close to him. I think if I'd glanced the branch and actually like touched the animal, like grazed his belly, I think he was out of there.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The fact that it glanced it so far away that it like saved the whole hunt, because there's just no way that a buck like that can let this happen.
See, talk about luck there.
Oh my goodness.
Jeez.
Yeah. It was crazy.
That's where my heart would have dropped.
I thought he was gone. I mean, I thought there's no way. And that's why, like, and it was all these split seconds. So like, I mean, the funny thing is, I was shaking so bad, like, when I'm trying to knock this next arrow.
Yeah.
Like, it took me so long to get the dang thing knocked, and I'm keeping my eye on him as I'm doing this to make sure that if I need to freeze. I never really looked up at the tree. He like one time glanced back my direction, but that was it.
Okay.
And so now he just stayed in the same spot. So I was able to get that arrow knocked, draw my bow. And I really took my time again. Same thing, sight housing, all that stuff. He's quartering really hard, like almost, yeah. The only shot opportunity I had was to aim behind his right side, his last rib on his right, aiming towards his front left shoulder. I knew that was the only way I was going to get slip an arrow into vitals. And I wasn't going to wait for him to take any steps or anything. I just can't. He's at 12 yards. So settle the pin, and I double checked that there was no tree branches.
That was going to be my next question.
And it's all, within a few seconds, all these things. And when I released this time, I hit exactly where I was aiming, and I as soon as that hit, it was like that initial feeling of that's a dead deer. Like, that was the first thought that went through my mind. As soon as I saw my arrow hit its mark, I was like, yeah, that's a dead deer.
Did it pass through him, or did he run with it?
No, it didn't. I think it went up. I thought I'd almost hit liver up into lungs. But upon recovering him, I didn't even think there was maybe a graze mark on the liver, but I had gotten into both lungs and up in the chest cavity. So I slipped that thing.
Yeah, really, you smoked him.
Yeah. So, I also will say this: being able to knock a second arrow, I will attribute it to this point. I keep 5 arrows in my quiver. 3 of them I would call like deer harvesting arrows, and 2 of them I keep on there. They're like older, like they're the same type of arrow, but they're just older, and I keep a different like old broadhead on them. And
Okay.
like I use them to kill raccoons, like in Iowa,
Okay.
like they're open season and farmers hate them. Like I only have permission in Iowa, so like I always love telling a farmer like, hey, I smoked a raccoon this morning. Like they're like, yeah, like you saved a bushel of corn or something. So I'm always like, when I'm hunting, I'll switch out arrows quite regularly. Like it's something I do just about every hunt.
Okay.
That I so in a way I'm almost practicing getting another arrow knocked. So thank you, state of Iowa, for making it open season on coons. But
attribute practice for that.
yeah. So it hits it. The arrow hits its mark. He mule kicks. He runs kind of does a little curl, runs to about 40 yards, stops, and the arrow's still in him. And then he kind of does that thing where they stop and then they kind of jolt again and then go running more. So he jolts and he runs away. And he got to about 85 to 90 yards and he stopped again. And like this whole time too, like I always try to look at their tail to see what their tail's doing. Like, is it up? Because his tail was never up. It was always down, which is always a good sign. But
Did he give you any of those little flickers or no?
He did some flickers when he stopped, So like he flickered and then he actually took some steps like to his left and then he bedded down. And I was like, okay, like, whew, like take a breather, take a moment. I kept I was looking out through my binos at this point. And then I made a quick, quiet call to my dad because I was like, I could keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because like, he knew he didn't know anything. The last text he had gotten, it was like, are we shooting does tonight? And,
that's so true. Yeah.
Like,
that's
he's sitting up there in like the wind, seeing nothing. And I've got all this going on. And like, then he gets a phone call. And so then he answers the phone and he says, what did you do? Like, he was like, he knew something was up.
Yeah.
I was like, I was like, I just shot the biggest buck I've ever seen is what I told him. And he was like, ever seen? And I was like, yes, ever seen. And he's like, what? And so I'm like, I smoked him. I made a great shot. Like I was super confident at this moment because I was like running high on all sorts of adrenaline and craziness.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I can see him bedded though. I was like, he's not dead right now. So I was like, we're gonna have to make some decisions here. And like as I'm talking to him on the phone, I'm whispering, right? He's like, do I need to come down there? And I'm like, no, I don't think we should do that. Like, I think we need to let him expire. He like gets out of his bed and I'm like on the phone with him. I'm like, hold on a second. So I like put the phone in my bino harness and I grab my binos and like he walked probably 20 yards, maybe further. And then almost like curled, like kind of back towards me, like took a few steps kind of facing me and he bedded down again. And before he bedded there, I could see him, and he kind of did like the sway, like a deer like sway back and forth, like really hurting. So he did that, and he really laid down hard into that bed. And so then I was like, my mind, I was like, okay, he's gonna die in that bed if I'm really careful here.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'm like telling my dad, I'm like, no, I'm like we think we gotta like I don't want to back out, but I'm like I think we gotta back out. So he was like, okay, I'm going to get out of the stand. I'm going to get to the truck and I'll get to a good place to meet you. And so I sat there. I mean, at this point it was maybe 20 to 30 minutes more till dark. Okay. And I just sat there till pitch black. I mean, I sat there till well after like, dark. And then I gathered my stuff up. And I went down to where the shot was and looked for some blood, sat on a log real quick for a few minutes just to listen his direction to see if I heard, anything jump him up. And there was other deer. I mean, like I had 2 other bucks walk past me too at this time and stuff. So like I'm hearing stuff walking around like every time,
sure.
I'm getting up and standing like, oh my gosh, hope that's not him. And
it's awesome.
So then I texted my wife. I get out of the stand. I made a huge loop. We'll walk the opposite direction of him, probably 100 yards. Made a big loop out of there. Meet up with my dad, and I'm like, my gut is telling me like we're gonna find that deer if we give him time, but like I really want to go in there, like
yeah.
And he was reminding me how confident I was. He was like, "You were so confident, like when you shot the deer that like he's like, I'm sure it's going to be dead as well." So I'm trying to get back home. This is the key point of the story. All comes back to my wife, and I truly mean that. Like, besides God guiding, I don't know, somehow not having that deer spook, my wife, I call her and I'm like, "Hey, I was like, I got this on like my video on my phone too."
Okay.
So like I kind of took some screenshots of the buck, as he was like walking away. So I was trying to like show people how big he was, but he doesn't look that big in those videos because it's on a phone. But I was telling my wife, I was like, "Hey, like, this is the situation," and I'm like, "I know you probably want me to get home. Like, what do you want me to do?" And she was like, "Hey, she had a bunch of baking she was doing that night. She's like, I've got baking I'm gonna be doing till like 12 or 1 a.m. She's like, just stay. Like, if you just stay overnight, I'm gonna be fine." She's like, "I know how much this means to you." She was the last thing she told me was like, "Don't mess this up." She literally said, "Just don't mess this up."
It's awesome.
And as soon as she said that, I was like, "Okay, love you, bye," whatever. And like, I look at my dad, and I was like, "We're backing out like right now." Like, as soon as the wife like signed off, like all the pressure was off to get back and like get to him sooner. So yeah, so we actually backed out. It was like a 40-minute drive back to my parents' house. We ate some chili.
Okay.
It was a Thursday night. We watched a little Thursday night football. I couldn't tell you a thing about the game. I couldn't tell you who was even playing.
You were thinking about it, weren't you?
Thinking about something
manifesting?
else. And then we drove back out there. So the shot happened around 6:20, and we left to head back out there around 9:20. So it was about 3 hours.
Well, you give him a few hours, yeah.
Yeah, total. And so I don't. Have you ever been on like a big stock, like a follow up stock on a deer?
Yes.
Like when it's almost stressful. It is stressful. Like as you head back in because you're like, we got
You got like bow in hand and arrow knocked kind of deal?
No, well, it's after dark, so no. So I was like, so it's late, and I'm like, I'm not
that's
gonna.
a good point. I totally
like during the day.
That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like, oh, you're stalking a deer. Yeah, you got bow in hand. But yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay.
So it's dark, and so it's like, yeah, we legally can't do a follow up shot. Right. So I was like, okay, how do we approach this? Fun thing was too, my brother-in-law, who is not a hunter. We were like convinced him to come with, which was super fun that he got to be there.
Okay.
So we're driving out, and like the whole time I'm like, "Do you think he's gonna be dead?" And my dad's like, "I think he's gonna be laying right where you left him." And I was like, "I do, like, deep down, yes, I want to believe that, but there was a part of me that just would not let me like." There's a part of me that's like, "We're gonna bump him, and this is gonna be a whole fiasco for like 3 hours." You know what I mean? Like I was mentally preparing for like hands and knees, specks of blood.
Poor
you know
guy.
what I mean? Like I'm like, this is gonna suck. We've had that before where like we let a buck sit that was liver hit. Oh man, it was like 6 hours after shot, and we found him alive, that afternoon. Like thankfully we could go and make follow-up a shot on him, but man, like, this is gonna be awful. Like
I don't know, man. You saying the wobble, like that wobble there just tells me I don't know, but I'm assuming he's dead in that same bed.
So we made the game plan was this: we're gonna walk in there really quiet. We're all gonna have headlamps on, and we're gonna get to a certain point. Like we're gonna basically walk as close to what we think we can get to where I thought he had bedded. I dropped a pin there, and then we're gonna like no headlamps on the way in. It was a full moon night, so thankfully we had some light. And we're gonna turn our headlamps on at the same time. We're gonna scan, and thankfully when we got there. I took a leak next to a tree when we got back out there. And as I was
marking
doing that,
your territory, huh?
Yeah, right. Like these coyotes need to know. As I'm doing it, I was like, you know what? I should just turn my headlamp on while I'm doing this because we're hundreds of yards away from this deer is. I'm like, I'm just gonna scan the woods with my headlamp to just practice like the height of what a deer might be with what the understory is here. And there was 2 deer bedded like 50, 60 yards away, like from where we parked. And so I would like call my dad and brother-in-law over. I'm like, hey, look right there. There's 2 does. You can see them. And it was really great for us to see the profile of a bedded deer and what their eye height was and all that stuff. So that was a cool part too, where it was like really, it was awesome to be able to just be like, oh, that's what we're looking for. Like this kind of outline, there's the eyeball height. So we get down there, we walk in real quiet, we're listening, stopping every so often just to see if anything bumps. Real quiet. We get there, turn our headlamps on at the spot, and right away see eyes. But then they scurry off, and it ended up being a raccoon. Like, it was a panic moment. And so I was
Those
like,
damn raccoons.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh crap, he's right there. And then I was like, and then the way it slinked off, I was like, no way. And I was like, that's a raccoon. So then we took a few steps into the woods, or maybe like 5-10 yards in further to the woods here. And I'm looking straight north, and then I look back east towards the stand, and I'm like, okay, stand should be right there. So if the stand is there, I'm like, he should be like this direction. So I turned like all the way back around, and when I do that, I could see his head laying on a log. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's right here. And it was just like, can't believe it.
That's awesome, man.
And he had shifted a little bit. He'd actually shifted out of that bed I saw him in. So where he was like facing the tree and actually ended up being perpendicular to it. But he had laid his head on a log and died. And he still wasn't in rigor mortis. Like, he still was loose when we got to him. So he hadn't died too much before that. But it was pretty surreal because he was even bigger than I thought. And like, he had basically has triple brows. I mean, you've seen him like on both sides, and
yeah, it's sick, man. And just crazy looking deer.
Yeah.
What did he final score out at?
Like net or gross?
Well, both.
So he's like 191 and 6/8, and then he's is a gross score, and I think he nets 187 and 5/8.
Okay.
And then we're gonna get
ridiculous.
The official once after the 60-day drying period.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and he, I'm learning that scoring process too. Like, I don't even like.
Yeah.
I don't even understand it. I'm like, if the deer, like, I'm kind of in this camp of like, if the deer grows it, and like if it's in the scoring system, especially as a non-typical, which is what we'll enter him as. It's like they even on a non-typical, this is something I learned. They look at how similar each side is, and they deduct the difference even as a non-typical, which to me, sorry, Boone and Crockett, that seems like a contradiction of terms. If he's a non-typical,
right?
Like, that's the whole point. So he's huge. I mean, he's just massive, and crazy looking, and it was just like the surreal, like, can't believe it.
Yeah.
My mom, one of my sisters, and my wife, my brother-in-law took a video of us walking up to him, and me like having this crazy shaky voice of like, I can't believe him, I can't, like, all this stuff, and like they like they literally said like it made him cry, and I was like, I was beside myself. I could not believe, because I'm thinking he's like a 13-pointer, like a mainframe 10 with split brows and a little kicker thing. I'm like, he's just beyond what I thought. So,
well, mass will do that to you too, because like I've just had it where you see the frame, but the mass doesn't really like. I don't know, it's just not portrayed. But then you get up to the deer, when you put your hands on it, you're like, holy smokes! Like, these bases are like Coke cans, It's like,
yep.
So that was what your deer reminded me of. Like, just looking at it, I was just like, he's just thick.
Yeah, and it's even it's weird because like I've never really seen mass like that before, and I've only, full disclosure, in college athletics, which is what I do for my job, we have our indoor track and field championships on, what is it called? The Iowa Deer Classic. So I've only ever been one time. So I've seen some giant bucks there. Yeah. But even so, like, he carries his mass just differently. And when I look at any other buck, and especially now, I'm noticing that more. Just the mass is incredible, really. So, yeah, it's kind of
what a
insane.
story.
Yeah,
it's an awesome story, man.
When I first got into hunting, we used to shotgun hunt on a piece of property. My great grandpa Lee, and my middle name is Lee, named after him. I think it might have been his middle name. I don't know. Anyway, we would hunt down there like 3 days out of the year, maybe Illinois shotgun season is 3 days on one weekend, a 2-week break, and then 4 days on another weekend. And so we would always just go down there and hunt, and it's in one of the best counties in the 3 counties in Illinois by happenstance. So there was always just bucks running around, but we never had cameras or anything. So it's kind of fun to do that again. Like, I love using cameras and utilizing them. Man, it's just also fun to just go in somewhere blind and like anytime.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's part of the appeal of saddle hunting. That's kind of been the craze, is like you're just mobile or you're going to different places. I was talking about this with Darren, who was on the podcast for the elk hunt that we did. But I was telling him I would love to like get a week and we get a bunch of different people on, and we set up shop of like everybody's going to do mobile hunting, and you don't have to be in the same state, right?
Yeah.
But like everybody's doing it at the same time frame. And how much fun would it be to like be constantly in communication with one another? Because I always find like that's the fun part of whitetail hunting, is like, all right, I started this, I got in this new spot. Here's what I'm doing. You know, what are you guys seeing today? What's going on? Right. And I was like, it just keeps it so exciting. And then obviously if you film it, I think that's a whole nother dynamic to it. But it would be super fun to have some kind of like week of hunting where just like everybody's doing the same thing and you're just mobile. You don't know what's going on, right?
Yeah.
You don't have camera footage, whatever the case is. And then, see how everybody does, right? Because, in Michigan, we have kind of the same thing. We get a doe tag, and then we get, depending on where you're hunting, there might be limitations of, points, but typically where we hunt, it's kind of free game. Just, you can tag out on 2 deer. You could shoot 2 does if you want. So, in Illinois, you got 2 tags, in Iowa might
same
be a little
thing.
different.
You can per county get doe tags.
Okay.
And then you have your statewide tag, which is either sex as well. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I think that would be super fun, but I always just think about that, like going in blind. It is more fun than what you got on camera, because then you really have no expectation, but you could be shocked, kind of to your point.
Yeah. Well, it's fun. I mean, it's so fun. I mean, I did yesterday. I went on a hunt in the morning and went to a spot out here in Iowa that we have no cameras on it. It was just fun. It was just fun to go in there and try it out. And I hunted on the ground on that hunt, so I was able to move even more in that sense. But yeah,
it's awesome, man. Well, congrats. I appreciate you sharing that story. That's huge. I would say you're like in top 4, top 5 people now that I know that have shot that big of a deer. Like either I've physically seen them in person, or like just I actually know, hey, this is what's happened. That's awesome, man. So
yeah, no, I appreciate it, and it's it's one of those things. It's like I don't know that I call myself too much different than the next guy with that. Definitely have a blessed to have the places done that I do. I think that's a key part, and like that helps. I mean, being in like the Midwest is great, and that.
Yeah. Well, you're in land of the giants,
Illinois and Iowa. That helps quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so it's it's pretty cool. And that's been the thing lately that I don't know. I'm trying to still stay in the game hunting, with the tags that I've left of like, I likely won't ever harvest a deer of this size again, and let alone see one. But then see one, but let alone get a chance at another one of this size. They're just not that common. So especially with someone like me who I don't own any land and don't have that quote unquote control. It's not like I've got 500 acres. It's manicured. If that was the case, like, there'll be another one someday. But so that's been something that I've been processing, too, as I go out to the woods still, and like, I'm not in that category anymore of like, oh, I got to shoot a bigger one. It's like, you got to just enjoy the hunt, and do it
Yeah.
for the same reasons we started. I started hunting, and it's just so
it's
fun.
tough now. If you try to one up that, you're going to be miserable.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. Well, and yeah. So I think, I do absorb a lot of hunting content, not just in the sense of watching guys hunt, but I'll watch like Bill Winke's stuff and listen to the things he says about aging deer on the hoof, or like the juries have some good stuff. And there's another,
Sure.
but there's some whitetail pages that I follow that are really just about some of those, just things to just be a better woodsman and just know some different stuff. So like that's kind of the stuff that I'm like, this year, it's like, okay, the rest of my time in Iowa on the tag that I have here, it's got to be about either mature, I'm understanding that to the point of how big this buck is, how unique it is for a buck to even get to this size. Cause there's a maturity factor for deer,
Yeah.
a mature, like this deer is just special because he's got the genetics that he has and the environment he was in to grow to this size, where you could take a deer, this like 10 other deer that are the same age, and they're just going to grow differently, and they've got different genetics, and that's what the people talk about, management bucks and that. Yeah, I mean, so it's, it's kind of sinking in, I think, as I've been hunting
Yeah,
a
it's
little
getting there.
more.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, but I also am like, it's kind of fun. It's taken some pressure off for me too, where like I love helping other people. Like I was trying to help Kent shoot his first deer on this one property that I have permission on, and he got him permission. And you have to see how that is. I don't know if you'll ever have him on, or if you listen to his podcast. But yeah, I also mentor a young man, and he's been mentoring him as a hunter for the past 6 or 7 years now.
Wow.
So for him, he's going to come down for late muzzleloader in Iowa. And
Sweet.
It's like, I've already passed a few bucks in that area before I shot this one. And now it's like, like I definitely want to make sure we get him on a good deer. It's just like, there's just no pressure anymore in that way. Like,
yeah, no, man.
when you draw your Iowa tag, it's like, come on, buddy. Like, here's where the big one is, like,
yeah. I'm still trying, man. I'm probably, I think I'm like 2 years away realistically, but we'll see. I definitely want to draw archery for that area, but
depends on where we go, I guess, too. I mean, around here, there's, I guess, 2 zones that you would have access to depending on where you hunted. So
yeah, I was looking at the draw odds. I think statistically I need 2 more points.
Yeah.
So if I tried for next year, I don't think I'd draw, but the following year I would draw. So I just kind of have that in the back of my mind. So, this next year, 2025 I think is well, I know 2025 is the land of I'm swinging for fences pretty much on every state that I apply for.
Nice.
And if it doesn't stick, I think I'm gonna end up in Montana. So
okay,
I might be seeing you there, because I think you're gonna be you're gonna be out there.
Is this the hunt we get to go on together? Wait a second.
If I draw that, so if I draw Montana, well, I'm guaranteed to draw the Montana General.
Mm-hmm.
But if I draw the Montana General, then I'm gonna go out there for archery, and then if I don't harvest, then I'll go back for rifle. So, but I'll have both tags too, so I'll have a deer and an elk tag. So.
Yep. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That might be hey,
might be spending some time out there.
Heavy. Oh man, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So we'll see. But hey, man, I don't want to hold you any longer. I really appreciate the time. Really cool story. Congrats on a heck of a freaking deer there. I don't doubt you're gonna have a hard time toppling that one. So
yeah. Hey,
it's awesome.
But I mean, I love hunting, and it's something that I'll always do. You know what I mean? Like, I already got the spot on the wall picked out for him over here, but it's like, that's, I think that stuff is cool, but it's not why I do it. Even it's like, it's great, but it's like, man, I'm going hunting tomorrow morning. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm going back out there. So,
dude, when you love it, you love it. It just doesn't stop.
Right.
So.
Right. It's what we do.
Totally, man. Well, hey, I know you got your own podcast and stuff. You wanna give a little shake about what your podcast is about, and kind of how our listeners and viewers can find you?
Yeah, well, Alex has been featured on the Backwoods Bulletin podcast already, and maybe again soon or in the future. But yeah, we Backwoods Bulletin podcast. It airs on the same day that this podcast does, on Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays, I guess. But I try to do a couple things. I just try to keep it to 30 minutes is what my goal is on the podcast. So it's a good commuting podcast. And then lately it's been a little more news story-esque, and I try to give a little bit of an update of maybe like the last episode was about the top 4 states for whitetail public land access. And then just went over some of the bigger bucks that have been harvested across the U.S. this year.
Love it.
On what's Real True Outdoors has a rack report. So I was just literally I pull stuff off some websites like that and just get that out there to people, because it's kind of an interesting commuting type of a thing. But we'll also interview people and products, and I've got some different things in the works that I'm really, excited to talk to some people about. And yeah,
Sweet.
but we'll cover like hunting and fishing and, really just about anything outdoors wise. But we keep it kind of short, keep it kind of brief. So, which is hard for me. I'm long.
What about following you? So the podcast is called Backwoods Bulletin.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty terrible on. I have made an Instagram page for that. I'm pretty bad at doing that. But my personal page is Caleb Lee Drake. It's just all one word.
Sweet.
And I usually share like when the episodes are out on my story, or you can see some pictures on there of like this buck that I harvested, and I'll post pictures of the rough scoring that the Boone and Crockett measurer did here soon. And and then I guess if you want to see the hunt, I do have a YouTube channel called Wildfoot Outdoors. And it's just a 3-minute short, because I have my phone up and down, but so it's just a short video of the hunt, and then you can kind of see some of the other. I documented some of the progress of some of the projects I did in like Illinois and Iowa this year.
Cool.
I'm trying to film some hunts, trying to do that, but it's just on my phone, super simple, nothing crazy. Probably need to invest in something a little nicer at some point, but.
Yeah, tell me about it. I got all the camera stuff. I just bought a new lens too for my Sony, so I'm anxious for that. I'm gonna video my deer hunt upcoming.
Can you take some pictures with it as well?
Yeah. It's a 24 to 240 lens.
Wow.
So I can zoom it, and then I don't know if you know much about cameras, but I can put it in APS-C mode, which will basically put it in a crop, but then it zooms it at 1.5 times. So I basically go from like a 240 to like, I don't know, let's call it 340, 350. I don't know if that's right math. I'm totally just ballparking it, but
that sounds like a lot
can make it. Yeah, I can make it like a super zoom essentially, and then there's another feature on those Sonys where you can do it. It's called steady shot, so that puts it at another. It's at 1.1 times. So you take 1.1 times a 1.5. Anyways, I can get it to a pretty darn far zoom. So I really wanted this lens for that, because there's some times where I'm videoing and I'm like, dude, that thing's like 400 yards away, and I don't feel like I can get it. I have like a 70 millimeter max zoom lens.
Yeah.
So that'll be great for this deer hunt, for some of those open fields and stuff like that.
I think it might end up Kansas one.
No, that's just here in Michigan. I got a group going out. I got 4 guys in camp here coming up.
Right, rifle season then, huh?
Yeah, well, for us it's shotgun and straight walled cartridge and shotgun.
Yep. Yeah, like Iowa's gun season. Yep.
Yeah, shoot those 450 Bushmasters, which are just tanks, man.
Those are cool. Yeah, they're cool guns.
So yeah, man. But I'll throw in my little spiel here. It is coming up here to tag application time. So if you guys are interested in talking about tag applications, hunt planning, or getting some form of chat going for some form of future endeavor going out west, this is the time to do it, because before you know it, we're going to be walking into really January, and we're going to be full steam ahead. So with that, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns about any of those things, please head over to www.east2westhunts.com. Go ahead and hit that contact us, or just go ahead and book a free consultation on there. Book you straight in my calendar. We can chat for 45 minutes and see what we can do to help you out if we can. And otherwise, go ahead and follow on Instagram at East to West Hunts. And that is the same handle for YouTube at East to West Hunts. These are video episodes, so you will be able to listen to the podcast on YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. So if you're listening to this, thanks so much. Give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and all that jazz. Till next time, remember to scout, hunt, and repeat. Thanks.